Hi everyone, my name is Kelly from Casey'sMusicMethod.com, and today I'm going to give you some essential tips for how to teach guitar lessons to children as young as 5 years old. So I've been teaching guitar for almost 20 years, and I've learned a lot about teaching young beginners. So I started teaching guitar lessons in 2003, and the company that I worked for had a person called a lesson coordinator. This was the person that was in charge of assigning students to the correct teacher. So basically what would happen is a family would come into the store where I worked and say, I want guitar lessons for my child. And the coordinator would say, okay, here's a list of our teachers. There were lots of parents that wanted lessons for their children as young as 5 years old, but none of the teachers would teach children that young. So I decided to give it a shot. Why not, right? Here's what I learned over the past 18 years through trial and error. Tip number 1, keep things ridiculously simple. Try to think of the most basic exercises and songs imaginable. You want your students to have success right away, so make things easy for them. An example would be to just play open strings over and over again, or playing to a beat, or switching between strings. Very simple ideas. I'm not going to get into too much detail about content or what to teach because that will be shared in another video. Tip number 2, use simple or no notation. Don't rely on music notation to teach a 5-year-old. It's best to demonstrate to the student and have them play it back to you. So call and response style. You play something, they repeat it back. You play something, they repeat it back again. If you have to use notation to teach, I recommend using tablature because it's number-based and it's more familiar to them. Tip number 3, repetition is key. We all know that in order to improve, you need to practice. Practice in its most simple form could be having a student playing a note or a riff over and over again. I use jam tracks and instruct students to keep playing until they hear the music stop. You could also say things like, repeat this 4 times or 8 times, etc. Tip number 4, choose music that is fun and interesting to play. This is all relevant to the student, of course. I've never really liked playing or listening to little kids songs like Mary Had a Little Lamb or Twinkle Twinkle, but if a student wanted to learn one, you bet I would teach it to them. This brings me to tip number 5, allow students to have a choice in their learning. I create a wish list for my students and keep track of the songs that they want to learn. Even if the songs are way too hard for them to play, I'll at least try to teach them a basic version of that or some form of it. You can always teach your regular songs that you like teaching and sprinkle in a few of their wish list songs throughout their lessons. Tip number 6, keep things moving. In a 30-minute lesson, I may have a student doing 10 different things. Now again, this depends on the student, but a good rule of thumb is to focus on a song or an exercise for 3 to 5 minutes each. My last tip for you is to go with the flow. Teaching young children to play music can be pretty wild, and sometimes it may not look like much learning is taking place. That's okay because in reality, you don't really have control of what the student does anyway. Be patient with your young student and try to find creative ways to engage them. It can be helpful to speak with parents if you find what you're doing in your lessons isn't working well. If you are the parent, then try something different. Sometimes fixing an issue is as simple as having a student stand while they're playing the guitar instead of sitting. Some students need to move while they're learning. This theory was outlined by Howard Gardner in his Multiple Intelligences. There's so much more that I'd like to share with you about teaching music to young beginners. If you need content, songs, or exercises, you can check out my books at Casey'sMusicMethod.com. I'm currently making a series of videos for helping parents and teachers teach young beginners, so keep an eye out for those. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about teaching children to play music.